So right now you're looking at one of the cheapest, fastest motorcycles that you can buy today. The 2005-2006 Suzuki GSXR 1000. So this bike recorded a time from 0 to 60 in 2.35 seconds, which makes it the fastest motorcycle ever from 0 to 60 ever recorded.
For Suzuki, race is core.
This bike did so good for its time. BMW actually took this bike right here, the K5, K6, and designed the first S1000 ever made from this bike right here.
Motorcycle's image, sportiness, and also good handling. So it comes from the motorcycle race experience.
So this bike has a ton of history behind it. That's why a lot of people still love it today. Let's talk about what you can actually pick these things up for, right? You used to be able to find these things all day for under $5, but today you'll find them for $55 all the way up to almost $10,000. But if you're patient, you can find them for right around that $5,000 marker. Like this gray and black one, I found this one. This is a clean one for right around $6,000, or this blue and white one that's low miles and excellent condition. Actually, he was asking more, but then he dropped it. So this was the first design they integrated the signals, and that was a trend to come for a long time, as they did it on the next model as well. So this bike comes with no rider aids, nothing like that, no ABS, no traction control, none of that stuff. This thing is so simple that anyone can work on it. I love that aspect of it. I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys hear it. So this bike has a dry weight of around 366 pounds, and it actually feels pretty light for a older leader bike. I mean, when I got on my other bike, the first thing I noticed was like, wow, this thing doesn't feel that much different. The tank's a little bigger, but it's pretty light for a leader bike. Now let's talk about the specs, right? This bike has around 178 horsepower. It'll do around 186. And if you go on Instagram, you can see that. But the best part about these bikes is the mid-range power. This bike has so much torque. One thing to look for when you're looking at these bikes, the frames would actually crack on this bike. You can take the VIN number and run it on Suzuki's website, and they'll tell you if your particular model is infected. This next bike on my list, I know for sure you can get for $5. And that's going to be the gsxr. So the Gen 1 is the blue one, and the green one is the Gen 2. So if you look at the front, the lights on the Gen 2 are smaller, and I actually think the Gen 2 looks slightly more modern. Tell me what you guys think. The second generation is the first year they went to that Undertale style exhaust, which looks pretty cool. This bike has around a dry weight of 375 pounds, so it's 9 pounds heavier than this bike, dry. The horsepower for this bike is around 173, and I even saw 180. So you go to one site, they say this, you go to another, they say something else. So we're gonna go with like 175-ish, 170, somewhere in there, right? This bike is so cheap that it's almost impossible to say no. It's almost like, don't be surprised if I pull up on this bike one day, or you see me on one of these second gens or first gen bikes. Now, I did look online to try and find some problems with this bike. The only problem I could really find is the cracking of the frame, right? The frame cracking again. I'm like, what is up with these older bikes and the frames cracking, right? I'm not 100% sure that they crack, but I did see people talking about it. But they didn't actually recall it like they did on this bike. And that's gonna bring us into the next bike, guys. The myth, the legend, from 1999 to 2007.
Everything else looks like prey. Hayabusa.
The first gen Hayabusa, man, everybody's seen these. And you don't have to get a 1999 either. You can find around a 2004, 2005 for $5,000 all day. And the Hayabusa is actually named after a bird. You know that bird that dives out of the sky going over 200 miles an hour? Yeah, the falcon. That's pretty cool how they named it after the fastest bird in the world, because they were trying to achieve one of the fastest machines in the world, and at the time they definitely did. So yeah, the Hayabusa is an iconic motorcycle that changed the game forever. A lot of people are a big fan of this motorcycle, man. It's designed to be a motorcycle that you can ride on the street, but it's more comfortable than like this.
A surprisingly smooth ride and a very comfortable riding position made this a machine that even a beginner could ride all day, as long as they controlled their throttle hand.
And the Hayabusa makes around 180 horsepower, something like that. Has a top speed of around 194 miles an hour. Some people will say it'll do more. Now, I wanted to talk about the problem with the first gen. A lot of first gen Hayabusas, they have that second gear issue. So when you're looking for that first gen, just be careful with that transmission issue. If you can find a first gen that has an undercut transmission, then hop on top of it. So that's going to bring us into the next bike, guys. The bike that competed with the Hayabusa.
150 miles an hour in less than 10 seconds, reaches a top speed of 190 and costs less than a Ford Focus.
To the 2000 to 2006 ZX12R. This is pretty much a similar motorcycle to the Hayabusa. It's the competitor to the Hayabusa. Now, when this motorcycle came out,
European Commission threatened dire consequences if it really did 200 miles an hour.
they're like, no. It can go 194, but it cannot go 200. 200, no. So that was like a big deal. Low speeds, the horsepower is 178 horsepower, right? But at high speeds,
That's the ram air duct, which Kawasaki says adds actually 12 brake horsepower when you're going at full chat.
in 02, when they updated the ram air intake system, it made the bike a little bit faster and accelerate better. 03, there was no updates performance-wise. And then in 2004, they updated it again, giving it a little bit more power and better acceleration. There was no updates after that, and they actually discontinued it in 2006. And then they came out with what we all know, that ZX14, right? The real fast one. So this bike is a bang for your buck. As I said, discontinued in 06, but if you look at especially the earlier years, like the 01, but preferably try and get an 02 or an 04 and up, you can find these all day for around 5. So that is going to bring us into the next bike, guys. The 04 to 06 Yamaha R1. And these things are beautiful, especially the modern ones. People love these gsxrs, man. Just like the ZX10, this bike has that undertail style exhaust, but if you look at around the 04 to 06, you can find these bikes for cheap. I mean, look at this price right here. This is a nice blue, but just look at the overall design. Like, you can't say this bike looks almost 20 years old. It just doesn't. I will say in the front, the modern looking ones do look a lot better in the front to me, but this is still a great looking bike, and you cannot beat this for the price, man. Anytime you tell me cheap and you tell me fast, I am listening. And this bike is cheap and it's fast, and it has a dry weight of around 379 pounds and a top speed of around 184 miles an hour, right? That is going to bring us into the next bike, guys. So if you don't like sport bikes and you don't like that uncomfortable position, but you still want fast, right? I got the perfect motorcycle for you, man. And this bike is easily under $5,000. And that is going to be the FZ1. Yamaha FZ1. That old generation R1. Same motor. So it has 150 horsepower. Almost 150. Like 146 or something like that. But for this bike, if you want it to be fuel injected, you need to get an 06 and up. 2005 and earlier, they were actually carbureted. And personally, when it comes to these inline 4s, you want fuel injection. Carburetors are fine when you only have to deal with like 1 or 2, but once you start having to deal with like 4, man, fuel injection is just better. You can easily get these all day for under 5. You can even get a 2012 for under $5,000. And if you want to get an even older one, you might even be getting in the 3s, man. So for a liter bike engine to pay that price is, I mean, that is unbelievable. All right, so now we got the CBR 1000, man. Everybody knows that CBR. Like I said, you get to the mid 2000s, you see 600s and you see 1000, same year, same make, everything. Like, how is that the same price? You know, this bike has that that 2 headlight look in the front where one is off and the other one stays on, and it looks like one of your headlights is out. My brother had a 600, and he used to tell me, people would be like, yo, your headlight's out. Man, these People love these gsxrs, man. So let's talk about the specs of this bike, right? This bike has a top speed of just under 180 miles an hour, a dry weight of 394 pounds, and horsepower is around 172. So they're all fast. Every single leader bike you get is going to be fast. Sure, one does something better than the other, but they all do one thing about the same, and that's go very fast and send people to the maker. And this bike has that Undertale style exhaust like I talked about before. CBR was the first one that I've ever seen do it. Oh, there's a Lamborghini over there. A blue Lamborghini. CBRs are always priced so fairly, man. I love CBRs. That is going to bring us into the last bike, guys. And this is the only bike that is not a 1000 or higher.
The championship-winning gsxr 750 Superbike, a machine well known for its demanding character.
Preferably the 2006 and up, because if you look at the 2005, I mean, just look at this. This looks significantly older than the 2006. And 2006 is when they completely revamped it, just like they did to this bike in 05, where they put the signals on. They did that for that bike in 2006 for the first time ever. And it looks amazing. To me, every single bike should do that. What's going on over here? This is why you pay attention. One of my favorite gsxrs to this day is that bike. I actually wanted this bike that I'm on, same year, same everything, but just a 600 and the same exact color too, just because I love that bike. That's considered the baby brother to this bike. So let's talk about the specs with that. So that bike has a dry weight of around 359 pounds, and it makes around 148 horsepower with the top speed of right around 173 miles an hour. This is one of those bikes that you can get for right around that 5 marker. If it's really clean, maybe a little more expensive, but if you're considering that bike, you definitely have to consider this bike, because this bike is pretty much the same thing but faster. And to me, from owning a 600, it feels pretty identical. Now, the only con is that electrical issue. What happens is the rectifier is located right near the header, and that header gets like 2,000 degrees, and it just keeps frying that rectifier. All you really have to do is get it away from that header and move it somewhere other than that, and it's good to go. So if you guys like cheap motorcycles like I do, go ahead and check this video out over here. And if you guys are looking for a used bike for a good deal, watch this video over here. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.